Hey everybody, welcome back to Chapter 6 of Travels with My Lamps, the Canadian Armed Forces Show Tours. For those about to rock, we salute you. I was fortunate to be involved with 7 Armed Forces Show Tours in the late 80s and early 90s. I did 5 cross-Canada tours and 2 tours of duty in Europe. Traveling with the Armed Forces was a real blast. Anything you ever needed was available, all hours of the day or night. Need an electrician, loaders, or a good bottle of scotch? All could be procured with the right phone call. As you travel to different bases, the forces are ready for you. The officer in charge has a hospitality budget, and I'm sure a few bucks in the kitty to entertain the visiting performers. And basically, we show up with a lot of hot chicks, so we got the keys to the kingdom. No amount of booze is too much. Food flows like a river, and every night you go to a different reception. Now, the first night in town, you generally do the officer's mess, and it can be a little stuffy, like a corporate reception, and who doesn't love those? But the food's great, the speeches are short, and you can usually escape early. The next night would be the sergeant's mess. Things would loosen up a little bit. The following night into the junior ranks mess where all hell would break loose. Sleep would be an option, and a good-sized USA grade military hangover was due to you the next morning. The first tour I did was produced by Bob Spencer and featured Suzanne Gratton and Carla Charret on vocals with Randy French as the band leader. Bernie Sandor was mixing, and I was on lights and stage design with Laura Skelton. Hey Skeltar, on the wardrobe. I seem to recall one really large case affectionately labeled Mofo 01. Had all the costumes and props in it. Every tourist got one asshole case. We drove to Trenton to catch a Hercules transport plane from the base to Happy Valley, Goose Bay, Labrador, where the forces maintain an international training station and base. It's my first of about to be many rides on a Hercules. They are really old. By then, most have been in service at least 40 years. The front half of the plane has webbed seating that folds down from the sides of the plane. The back half is all equipment, all palletized on cargo on pallets. It's not like a commercial plane where you're separated from the cargo. No leather chair, no hot meal, no onboard entertainment. It's more like riding in the back of a truck. Temperature is either freezing cold or boiling hot. The meal is a box lunch, and in-flight entertainment was watching the girls contemplate using the bathroom. You see, the bathroom is a bucket with a shower curtain around it on the back ramp of the plane. So, and the noise inside, almost 100 decibels. Earplugs were handed out, and they were mandatory, so you'd spend a good chunk of that flight, and they were long, in your own head. Now, we quickly learned that if we loaded our skids all flat on top, so no wheels poking out or stands or none of that, just nice flat cases. Once we got the seatbelt sign came off, we could all jump up on top, and at least you could stretch your feet and lay around. We do our first show in a small theater, and my truss almost doesn't fit. Some discussion, we've managed to fit it in, and we're on our way to our first successful show of the tour. From Labrador, we have our first really long flight to Alert, located at the top of the world on the northern tip of Ellesmere Island, several hundred miles from the magnetic North Pole. Now, many world maps don't even show the top of the country. They kind of chop that off up top. You'd think this post is all about hardship, but we arrived on steak and shrimp night, and they had current movies in the cinema. Alert Airlines, we only fly south. Now, loading into the North Pole the first time was definitely an adventure. They had equipped us all with Arctic survival clothing. We had massive parkas, wind pants, boots, huge gloves. And it's a good thing because we got the base, it was minus 35 and pitch ass black all the time. And our stage was set up in the gym, so off we went to unload our skids. Pretty cool load in as we traveled them all through the snow mounds and broke them all down, carried them inside. We played golf outside with irons and orange balls, and they'd spray paint a circle on the ground, and with like a 5 iron and an orange hockey ball, you'd have to chip it. up into the circle. And there was Arctic foxes, and they like the game too. They chase your balls. They like golf. Who knew? Now, my greatest discovery at this time was learning that manpower was not a problem. I was used to being understaffed and overworked, so having many crew at my disposal was kind of a game changer. I saw firsthand how the military structure worked, and I was learning how to bend the military to the ways of the stage. I learned that orders must be followed down the chain of command without exception. I didn't know it then, but I was on my way to becoming in love with the art of war. The Sun Tzu book, not the actual shoot and killing and stuff. After our shows, it was time to move on to Yellowknife, Northwest Territories. Most of this town I can't remember, but I do remember the birds. When we landed, they looked like they were really big on top of the hotel, but when they were on the ground, they were waist high. Like the birds from, Alfred Hitchcock, that movie. My other memory of being there is having a power bar to catch fire. Those power bars that, wind up, the orange ones, and you can have the coil, it's easy to transport and stuff. Well, this is where I found out that if you don't pull all the wire, it acts like an inductive coil and heats up, and I put a follow spot on it, and halfway through the show, it caught fire. You learn something everywhere you go. And after Yellowknife, we were back on the Herc on our way to Massive, BC, in the Queen Charlotte Islands. Now, my first time to that magical land, we had a blast. But this time the show was tight, and we were really, really on it. We did our final shows to the entire town, and we were loading out. During loadout, I asked one of the loaders, I was like, "Hey, bud, is there any mushrooms around, maybe to be had?" And he ran home in the rain, came home with a shopping bag of mushrooms and wouldn't take a dime. Hell of a cast party. The dancers crimped my mullet and sprayed it pink because troll hair was the thing at the time. After this tour, man, I was hooked. I wanted to work with the military, and I was doing anything I could to get on further tours. And the next ones that came up were working to Europe, working with John Allen Cameron. This was my first time leaving North America for work, and I couldn't have been in better company. Gordon Lemon, I was the band leader, Jeff and Tessa, Evisons, Mike Carboni, Pacey Schulman on sound, Laura Skelton back on wardrobe. And it was the first shot of scotch I ever had. It was all I could do to hold it down because it was in the back of a bus at 7 a.m. in Jerusalem. It was Johnny Walker Red, and I love scotch, and I really like single malt, but I can't touch Johnny Walker any color to this day. Egypt, Israel, Cyprus, Germany, playing Canadian and American Armed Forces bases. We were sitting in Egyptian Customs and Immigration, and a side door opened, and I get called over. The fuck? It turns out they had dropped a skid of our gear on a forklift. Well, at least it wasn't Midnight Express, as they led me out to the tarmac to survey the damage. And I had built the dimmer rack into a shock-mounted double touring case, and it was just fine. The same couldn't be said about the kick drum, which was in splinters. And the amp rack I had built was basically ripped 90 degrees on a diagonal that way, and just exploded all the wire and amplifiers out of it. Inshallah, we had a spare kick drum. And the next night, I stacked those amps on stage and hardwired it together in the classic MacGyver. Great Canadian amps, those Brystons, because they still worked. We're on an American base the next night. We go to the Red Sea. It was over 130 degrees Fahrenheit setting up. The Sergeant Major told me and us that we should work 15 minutes on and 45 minutes off with 4 liters of water an hour. I think I responded with well, bud, we'll never get her done that way. So I went into the desert with a bunch of troops, and the breaks kept getting longer. It was like working in a furnace with sand fleas. The Sergeant Major had a piece of hardwood dowel that he carried with him everywhere, and I had on all the regimental pins of where he'd been. And I asked him at one point in the day to see it. I said, "Mike, can I see that?" And he handed it over to me, and he explained all the pins like this from Vietnam and this, and it was really cool. And all those guys were watching this, and as he left the stage, his guys all rushed up to me and said, "Who the hell are you?" I'm like, "I'm just a lighting guy from Canada, And they're like, Man, nobody touches that stick. We get beat with that stick. That stick terrorizes the fuck out of us, and he just handed it to you? Sometimes you have these weird adventures. At the time, I even had a big red streak of dye in my hair, because why not? So I guess it was just my charming disposition. So at lunchtime, we finally went to the mess tent, and I was standing in line waiting for some fries. And the next thing you know, I woke up on a table like this. And I sat up, and everyone was looking at me, and I shook my head, and what's going on? And, well, the sergeant major watched me do all this work in the morning. He knew I was going to go down when that air conditioning hit me. So he followed me into the tent, and apparently was standing behind me with his arms out when I just collapsed. And he caught me and took me over to my chair where I woke up. Cyprus. Now, the seniors officers' mess in Cyprus was a rattan bar that looked like it was from a movie set. Ceiling fans had been there since World War II. And if you were accepted by the officers, you got to ride. So the idea was 3 guys stand on a stool underneath the fan, and you grab onto the blades, like this. Fan's not running. And the 3 of you are all chest to chest like this, and you're standing on a stool. And there's a guy at the door on the switch, and there's 2 guys that are going to grab your hips. And they spin you, and you kick the chair out, and the guy at the door, he turns the switch on, and now you're spinning around the room with your buds, and you got to hang on for as long as you can. Good times. Hey, Martin Fry, we'll never forget that, eh, Buck? Abandoned airports in the middle of the night. The Canadian Corps of Engineers was located on the old airport in Nicosia. A brand new airport was built right next door. But as soon as it was opened in 1974, the Greeks and the Turks went to war, and the new airport fell into no man's land. Now, the engineers hosted a barbecue for us, the touring crew, and we all went out to the old airport for a night of food, music, and booze under the stars. We went on a sunset cruise in APCs to the new airport, which led to drag racing down the pristine runways in the middle of the night, and weapons may or may not have been fired. Israel. Man, I loved Israel. It's tense but pretty alive. As we crossed the bus from Egypt to the border into Israel, I was immediately struck by the change of land use. The Egyptian side's kind of like a big sandbox, and Israel had orange groves right to the fence. Same soil, same sun. We spent Christmas Eve with the troops in the Golan Heights and performed several shows. And we also stopped at the greatest Elvis restaurant I've ever seen in the middle of nowhere. The first time I went to the tomb, where some think Jesus was buried, it was undergoing renovations, and the inside was all covered in scaffold. As I turned the corner into the tomb, a beam of sunlight shot through the scaffold and made a perfect breakup gobo onto the tomb. Stopped me in my tracks as I fumbled for my camera, and I got the shot. It reminded me there might be more superior lighting director up there. And on my second trip to Israel, we were all on a tour bus taking us to Jerusalem for a day off and sightseeing. And the tour organizer was kind of annoying, and I saw this tour was going to be lame, so as soon as we stopped, the comedian Wes Saharic and I bailed and went on our own adventure. Now, before we left Canada, the lovely entertainer Dinah Christie, hi Dinah, had made all of us insulated water bottle holders with a shoulder strap, and Wes and I had filled ours with a 50-50 scotch and water. We had a blast exploring one of the most fascinating places in the world. We followed our noses down a back alley where we ate falafel from 1,000-year-old cookware. It was an awesome day with a very funny man. We made it back to the bus on time to continue our adventures. I have very few memories of Germany, even though I went there twice. And to summarize, I love our Canadian military men and women. They're strong, they're dignified, they punch harder than their weight on any international mission, and to travel with them was an honor. Peace out.